Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Chaos Prime here, and today we're going to be looking at day 4 of the Microsoft and FTC preliminary injunction court case. We had Bobby Kotick. We had some big powerhouses. Bobby Kotick, Satya Nadella. We had Elizabeth Bailey as well for her continued disposition. We had a professor as well, I think Charlton. We had NVIDIA's chief for GeForce Now. So we had a lot of big hitters, and yeah, it was pretty disappointing today, I have to say. If anything, I'd say the FTC maybe had a little bit of a leg up, but honestly, I don't even know if you can call it that. The reality is, it was a pretty shocking presentation for today, and I can tell you out front, it was so bad at some points, I was almost falling asleep. It was that boring. The dispositions were just not great, and not much got announced, but I did want to go through it anyway, and glean at least what little bits came out from it, because there was some stuff from it, but yeah, we'll see. Okay, so there is 149 tweets that Florian did today. That sounds like a lot, and in all honesty, he probably could have got away with about 30 tweets. He did do a very good job in, thoroughly going through everything that was said and done, especially the important parts, well, key points, but none of it really mattered. Eventually, they finally started to talk about stuff that actually mattered, like the degrading of a game. Would Bobby Kotick ever sanction off something like that? And he said, no, why would I? The moment I do that, I lose money, and none of us want to lose money. And then they asked, would you ever consider Microsoft doing that? And I was like, no, why would they want to lose money? They also turned around and asked him if Phil Spencer ever mentioned or spoke to him about making the game exclusive to Xbox, and he said no, never. In fact, the discussions that they had were always about keeping the game on PlayStation and maximizing profits, sales. There was talks about the game going on to Game Pass, which he's still against. The FTC then turned around and was basically telling him, you say that you're against it and you never put games on the cloud, but it was on GeForce Now beta, and it was on, you put a version of Call of Duty onto PS Plus. And Bobby Kotick reminded the FTC that he didn't say he'd never do it. He said he doesn't like it, and they have experimented. The GeForce Now beta was an experiment. Putting it on PlayStation Plus was an experiment. However, both of those lost them a lot of money, because especially the PlayStation Plus one, because there was no return on investment once it went on there. And the shareholders, rightfully so, got upset because all they care about is money. And so he said, and the shareholders say, they don't like this form of transaction. Even though it's a lot of money up front, it's fine. And then the FTC said, yeah, but you're not saying that you'll never do it. And he's saying, well, no, because the amount of money that someone would need to offer is so obscenely high that no one in their right mind is going to offer that amount of money. But they're saying, but you're not saying never. And he's going, well, if someone came to me with $100 billion, essentially, I'm not going to say no. Who would say no to that? And then the FTC is like, but you're not saying no. You're not saying never. And it's going, it's not realistic. No one's going to come with that stupid amount of money to basically put it through. But the FTC kept on trying to badger along. Bobby Kotick kind of played both sides, in my opinion. He kind of catered a bit to PlayStation and also to Xbox, but I think he was kind of fair because as an independent company, he wants both sides to be happy. And when they're happy, that brings in more money. So he didn't want to burn any bridges, but at the same time, it wasn't great, his disposition, but he did support Microsoft enough. They asked him, do you want this deal to go through? He goes, absolutely, my shareholders want this deal to go through, and I have to respect their wishes because I represent them. So it wasn't clear whether he actually wanted this to actually go through, but as his shareholders want it, it is fine. And at the end of the cross-examination, the FTC asked him how much, basically told the court how much money he's going to make in order to discredit his his statements, because he has a vested interest in getting this case across. For those of you that are wondering, it's around 450 million. So a lot of money. They did focus on cloud quite a bit, and as you can see here, it's not more efficient to process in the cloud. Well, that's what Sony's group CEO Jim Ryan's boss also said not that long ago. Basically, essentially saying that all this talk about cloud processing and the power of the cloud, it used to be a buzzword, but it's no longer, it's no longer more powerful than what you can do on a native machine. It's supportive, but it can be done. Whatever you can do there, you can do here. Again, they asked, in the absence of the deal, any plans to have Call of Duty streamed? He said no, and the FTC then started arguing, saying, but it was on GeForce Now, and he said, yeah, but we don't have any plans to put it on there. But they're like, but you did put it on there, and it just got really dumb. And that just continued on. Even when the FTC came in, they were talking about how strong Call of Duty is, how much money it's made. And for some weird reason, they started to focus on Diablo 4. But Bobby Kotick quickly shut that down real fast, because the FTC was saying, well, what about Diablo 4? That sold 660 odd million in its first month or its first week. Meteoric rise. And he said, yeah, but you can't compare that to the success of Call of Duty. And they were like, why not? It's making a hell of a lot of money. And he's like, well, Call of Duty makes that money every single year. Diablo releases once every 10 years. The hype and anticipation for Diablo is going to be way higher than Call of Duty, considering they only get it once every 10 years. 2033 confirmed Diablo 5. But going forward, the FTC pretty much tried to intimidate Bobby Kotick, but he was having none of it. They really couldn't get anything out of him. They were saying, so what you're saying is, if this deal doesn't go through, you would release on the cloud. And he's going, no, I wouldn't. But you've already got it on, you had it on Ving. And he said, yeah, that was an experiment. And it was a failed experiment, so we wouldn't do it. And it just kept on coming back to that point, and it was kind of annoying. But I think he did enough to actually basically make it clear that he wants the deal to go through. If if Microsoft buys Activision, more people will have access to Call of Duty, because the game is not coming off PlayStation, but it will go on Game Pass. So those people that can't afford to buy it will now be able to play it through the subscription service. So that's more players gaining access. Not more money. There will definitely be a loss in revenue, but there will be more players playing the game. He did confirm that, which is, the point Microsoft has always been making. We're bringing Call of Duty to more players. The topic of Nintendo came up, and again, the FTC is like, I swear to God, they've got a hard-on for Nintendo Switch. It's almost like they have that Switch with their dick resting on it, and they're just jerking off to it, trying to see how fast they can jerk off to it. I really don't know. But it was really, really weird. I know they're trying to get this whole Nintendo isn't relevant, but even Bobby Kotick said it is 100% relevant. It is still a console platform. And he said, we don't have Call of Duty on there, but it's not that we can't put it on there. If we really wanted to, we could. But we haven't done it. And he said it's one of my regrets. And, speaking to the president of Nintendo, and they brought up confidential information, which I think was really wrong of the FTC. But it's basically now confirmed that there's a good chance that the next generation Nintendo Switch will have potentially have Call of Duty, because that was a discussion they had. So if Activision is already looking at possibly bringing it over, I reckon you can expect that the actual next generation Switch is going to be really powerful. It's not going to be the tablet that we have right now. And so the FTC spent the rest of the time with Bobby Kotick there, just trying to completely diminish the whole reliance on Nintendo by saying that you won't get the same quality game. Well, no, you're not going to get the same quality game. It's going to be a downscaled, down resolution version of the game, but it can work, and it can be enjoyable if they do it correctly. After all, we do know that Activision are the kings when it comes to not optimizing file size, but at least optimizing performance. They're pretty good at that. Then Elizabeth came back on stage, and that's when things got a little weird. So the FTC tried to undermine Elizabeth Bailey's testimony and tried to ridicule it, but she fought back. She was amazing, as she was yesterday. She highlighted that the top 15 PlayStation and Xbox games are also available on PC, so you really cannot discredit PCs. Then the FTC said, well, look, people need to spend, well, actually it was Professor Lee that said you need to spend $1,500. But Judge Corley asked as well, what do you say about the fact that people need to spend $1,500, as you can see here, on a PC? And she said, well, to be fair, most people who have a console also have a form of gaming PC that they can rely on, or a PC that they can rely on that can play these games. They may not be at the highest quality graphics, but they do in some way have a gaming PC. Judge Corley now asks Dr. Bailey about the price difference, gaming PC $1,500 versus a $500 console. Bailey says many gamers multi-home. Many already have a PC. Bailey says maybe some would go out and buy a PC to switch from consoles, but the more common scenario is that they already have a PC and then use it to play certain games. And I actually agree with that statement. And the FTC kind of tried to dispute that, tried to argue against that, but even the Judge Corley at this point accepted that. If gaming PCs are included, 2 of the FTC's 5 market definitions are dead, and this is why the FTC was so hell-bent in discrediting her, and they failed. If cloud streaming is deemed a delivery method, as Google's testimony confirmed, and multi-game subscriptions as payment method, no more product service markets remain. Geography is another issue. So basically, the majority of the cases of the points that the FTC was making are slowly just going out the window. It was crazy. The FTC then pressed on, saying that they wanted Dr. Bailey to confirm that an antitrust product market is the set of products to which people could turn in the event of a price increase. Dr. Bailey says it's one consideration, not the only one. In fact, the FTC focused so heavily on the fact that Microsoft increased Game Pass by $1 in certain markets, and the fact that they increased the Xbox, saying that this is only the beginning, they can increase it more. The fact that Sony were the first to increase their console prices, were the first to take games from $60 to $70, that was completely irrelevant. That was A-okay. They were fully in support of Sony increasing their prices. They were fully in support of Sony increasing game prices. But the fact that Xbox increased Game Pass by $1, oh my god, that was a deal breaker. Like, fuck the FTC, man. They are a fucking joke. Like, really, they are so shit. They are so biased towards Sony. And if you're watching this and are in support of the FTC, then you must be a Sony fan. And good for you, because they are literally supporting and defending Sony 100%. And as you'll see in the rest of this video, they went above and beyond. I think they actually did better than Sony lawyers would have done in trying to defend Sony. They were pretty on point, trying to safeguard Sony and their market share. And it's quite sad that they're not fighting for the consumer and they're fighting for the corporation. If they were fighting for the for the consumer, I actually think they had a really, really good chance of winning. Really good chance. But the fact that they're fighting for the corporation, their case becomes weaker. It's not saying that they can't win. There's still a chance. Anything can happen, right? After the CMA's decision to block, I'm saying anything goes. But the reality is, Had they have done their jobs, had they have actually done what they were, instructed to do by whichever administration is bringing them in, whether it's the Biden administration or however they're appointed, had they have done the job to the letter, to the legal definition that they're supposed to do, I think they would have had a really good chance of winning this and getting that preliminary injunction granted. But the fact that they focus so much on Sony and defending Sony, they cucked themselves quite bad. But anyway, let's continue. The FTC then started asking her questions regarding certain fields. She told them, it's not the work I did, it's not what I was instructed to do. You already know this. Of course, the FTC then returned back to their, definition that the gaming market is just not a global market. It is a US market only, especially when it comes to Microsoft. The rest of the world doesn't matter. And as Satya Nadella confirmed, Elizabeth confirmed, it is a global market. And I'm sorry, but if Judge Corley accepts that this is just a regional American market and not a global market for video games, she's fucking mental as well. Sorry, I'm really tired at this point, so I'm a little edgy. So do excuse that. I've had maybe 12 hours sleep in about 5 days. Not much. As I clarified before, the FTC wants the injunction and has the burden of proof. That also applies to the economic argument here that relates to the market definition. It's not that Microsoft has to prove the market definition. The FTC loses if its own is rejected. And honestly, the FTC just had a really bad time with Bailey. Bailey stood her ground, basically rejected everything with a really concise answer, and Judge Corley was actually very supportive in the way she was answering and accepting her definition. I think it really came to a head when Judge Corley now refers to God of War being more important to Sony revenue-wise than Call of Duty. Judge points to God of War being exclusive to Sony, while COD is not. So Call of Duty basically is a third-party game and it's available everywhere, so sales can go either way. But with God of War, they want to maximize those sales because those sales are on their platform only and they shift consoles. Call of Duty does not shift consoles because it's available on multi-plat. And she made that definition, which is really nice because it shows that Sony's agenda for exclusives actually does work and it does shift consoles, but it means that their first-party games are more important to Sony than Call of Duty ever could be. Here you go, Judge. God of War may be more important to Sony, but it doesn't reflect on the importance to the industry as a whole. Dr. Bailey says FTC's experts' concern was about foreclosure. That's what she then commented on. Judge Corley just obtained a clarification that Dr. Bailey's foreclosure analysis focused on impact on Sony and that the importance of God of War, single platform, to Sony is separate question from importance of Call of Duty multi-platform to the industry. So she actually corrected that as well and clarified to Judge Corley that, exclusive single player games on the PlayStation are really important. But when it comes to multiplats, they're a different, they're equally as important, if not more, because if you get the best deals, play now first, which was something that was raised to Bobby Kotick, or, having extra game modes like PlayStation had for a whole year, they are, defining factors. And all this talk about supplying a degraded version to PlayStation, well, they did just that to Xbox, but that's okay according to the FTC. Supplying a degraded version to Xbox is perfectly acceptable, but supplying a degraded version to Sony is 100% unacceptable. Yeah. FTC exclusive to PlayStation, 110%. Then the conversation turned to Diablo, and Dr. Bailey said, I didn't look at Diablo. Diablo wasn't in the question, and at the time of its the research, Diablo, there was no data because it just about was on its way to come out. So, why are we talking about Diablo? Diablo shouldn't even be in this conversation. We're talking about Call of Duty because that's the game that we're told to focus on. why are you talking about Diablo 4? Because the FTC knows that their case for Call of Duty is now fading. It's, it's slowly diminishing, and so they're looking for something else to grasp on. The FTC is scurrying around looking for anything to defend their precious PlayStation box. FTC now asks about the last God of War release and asks her to confirm it was 2017. Now, even if we disregard God of War Ragnarok as the latest God of War release, right? Like, even if we disregard that one, right? Let's just disregard that one. It's called God of War 2018 for a reason, right? Like, that's how stupid the FTC and dumb the FTC is. I mean, there's literally no research here. 2017? So yeah, they didn't even know when God of War actually came out, and they're asking the Sarah Bailey to confirm when God of War came out, and they're providing her with wrong information. I mean, all in all, it was getting very boring. They were asking Dr. Bailey the same questions over and over again, asking her questions that she couldn't answer because she wasn't, asking her expert specialized questions that you wouldn't ask her, but you'd ask, say, another lawyer or an accountant, or, someone that's not in that field. And then eventually, Judge Corley stepped in and says, why are you asking her these questions? That is not her field. That is not why she's here. Can you refrain from asking her questions that she cannot answer? You're wasting everyone's time. Even the judge got annoyed. Judge Corley interrupted when FTC lawyer wanted Dr. Bailey to opine on whether one completes a contract. Judges notes that the witness here is not a lawyer. So he then reframed the question as an economic question, and judge was fine with it. Like, it was getting stupid. They were trying to get that gotcha moment, and they just kept on failing. Just like Diablo, Overwatch is also a title with respect to which the FTC tries to make a wider all ABK titles argument. Thus, they asked Dr. Bailey whether she analysed the effect of Overwatch foreclosure. Answer, surprisingly, is no, because that was not what she was asked to do. And the FTC pretty much followed this through for the whole day. They knew what the people were actually working on and what the topics that they were researching on, and they just basically started asking them questions outside of the fields that they were doing it. It was really weird. Then the NVIDIA person came on, and this was kind of weird. The FTC basically in a video was asking the FTC, if it's Neil Fisher, is that his name? Well, I'll just call him Fisher. And he basically was saying, well, your testimony here to the CMA regarding Microsoft was pretty bad, and you're saying that you weren't happy with them. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's the case, but we sorted it out. Yeah, but you was upset with them, right? Yeah, but we've come to an agreement, and now we can get Microsoft and Bethesda ZeniMax games on GeForce Now. And if the deal goes through, we're going to get Activision Blizzard games. So we're happy. But you was upset with them, right? That was literally how it went. So NVIDIA was not happy with Microsoft, with Windows licensing terms for the server side of GeForce Now, but there is a Windows addendum to the 10-year Microsoft GeForce Now agreement that NVIDIA considers valuable and helpful. What the FTC is trying to do here is to portray that the Microsoft and NVIDIA agreement is more of a PR stunt, but given the agreement is already being implemented in practice with respect to Microsoft games, I doubt that is fine. That's the key thing here, right? Had Microsoft waited until this case had been resolved before they actually decided to put any games on to GeForce Now or put this into motion, I think the FTC would have had solid ground here. But the fact is, it's already in motion. Whether this case is blocked or not, it doesn't matter. Microsoft is showing that they are willing to put the games on GeForce now that they've come to an agreement. And that is irrespective of this deal going through. So the FTC's whole case there just fell apart in seconds, but they were, still badgering on, wasting everyone's time. This appears to be the Microsoft questions now, and NVIDIA confirmed that cloud gaming is small right now. but they do hopefully plan for it to be bigger. So this is the end of part 1 of the video. Part 2 is going to follow straight after, as soon as I've uploaded it. So hopefully you'll get that very, very soon. Had to split this into 2 parts. It was overall just over 45 minutes, so split it into 2 so it's a bit more digestible. So hope you appreciate it. Right, remain legend.